The Trump administration releases a list of Chinese goods worth $200 billion that could face 10% tariffs. It includes fruit and vegetables, handbags, refrigerators, rain jackets and baseball gloves. Chinese tariffs on $34 billion worth of U.S. imports come into effect. U.S. tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese imports come into effect. China cuts import duties on passenger vehicles from 25% to 15%. Canada imposes tariffs on $12.5 billion worth of U.S. imports. Trump threatens 20% tariffs on car imports from the European Union. The European Union imposes tariffs of 25% on U.S. products such as motorcycles, orange juice, bourbon, peanut butter, cigarettes and denim. India announces it will impose retaliatory tariffs on a range of American goods including apples, walnuts and some chemical and metal products. The tariffs will go into effect on August 4. Trump threatens tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods, on top of $50 billion already announced, if China retaliates. He threatens tariffs on an additional $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, if China retaliates again. China vows to retaliate with tariffs on $50 billion worth of U.S. goods, including cars, planes and soybeans. United States and China strike a deal on CTE. Mexico imposes tariffs on $3 billion worth of U.S. exports, a day after filing a complaint against United States with the World Trade Organization. Trade talks between the United States and China in Beijing fail to produce progress. Canada and the European Union file complaints against United States with the World Trade Organization. United States imposes tariffs on steel and aluminum from Canada, Mexico and the European Union. European Union says it will start the process for enacting retaliatory tariffs. Mexico vows to retaliate with comparable penalties on American lamps, pork, fruit, cheese and flat steel. Canada says it will impose tariffs on $12.8 billion in U.S. exports on July 1. United States says it will start charging tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico and the European Union. China says it will fight back against U.S. tariffs announced on May 29. United States opens investigation into car imports. Japan informs the World Trade Organization it could impose countermeasures against United States after being hit by steel and aluminum tariffs. United States and China call a ceasefire in trade dispute. Trade talks between United States and China begin in Washington. President Trump tweets he is working with China to save ZTE. Trade talks between United States and China in Beijing. China's Commerce Ministry says it will start charging importers a fee of about 179% on U.S. sorghum. The imports were worth $1 billion in 2017. President Trump calls for another $100 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese goods, if China retaliates against initial round of tariffs on goods worth $50 billion. U.S. Trade Representative announces initial list of roughly 1,300 Chinese exports worth $50 billion that could be subject to U.S. tariffs as punishment for intellectual property theft. China threatens tariffs on $3 billion worth of U.S. goods in response to steel and aluminum tariffs. U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs go into effect. Trump administration directs the U.S. Trade Representative to put tariffs on about $50 billion worth of Chinese imports following a 7-month investigation into intellectual property theft. Trump administration announces 25% tariffs on steel imports and 10% tariffs on aluminum imports, but grants exemptions to some allies, including Canada, Mexico and the European Union. Trump administration launches investigation into intellectual property theft by China. Trump administration launches investigation into aluminum imports. Trump administration launches investigation into steel imports. Julia Horowitz contributed to this report.